Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Stephen Marchessault, the Customer Success Specialist here at VETRO FiberMap. Thank you for making the time to join us today for our fourth User Enablement webinar. We're very glad to be here with you all. Today, we'll be talking about data management in VETRO FiberMap. Joining us is Alex Cavanero, VETRO's GIS Analyst Wizard, Data Format Customer Support Extraordinaire. He'll be taking us through some of the methods for formatting data, the available import-export tools in VETRO, and more. He has a slideshow to share with you all, and we'll be getting into a live demo of VETRO, Google Earth, and QGIS. But before we jump into the main demo, a couple of webinar-related and other housekeeping announcements and reminders first. Feel free to use the Q&A functionality of the Zoom webinar software to submit any questions. We have some VETRO panelists standing by to answer those questions for you. If you don't receive a reply straight away, we may set your question aside until the end as a talking point, or we'll get back in touch with you afterwards to follow up. So today's webinar will also be recorded. All attendees will receive an email later today with a link to view or download the recording. And our last three webinars were also recorded. You can request a copy of the recording or a link to where we have that hosted on YouTube. Those are also available in the product documentation in the help section. So the first thing we want to do today is jump right into a quick poll of everyone that is in attendance. So we're wondering, which of the following engineering GIS file formats do you work with in your fiber network planning and management? So these are the different options to choose from. So we'll take a quick moment, and there's an interface in the Zoom application that should allow you to submit your answer. So you can multi-select or choose a single answer. If you do indicate other, please feel free to reach out via Q&A and let us know what the other format is that you're working with, and if you're interested in bringing other file formats into VETRO. So we'll take just a couple more seconds here, up to 30 seconds. Submit your final answers in 3, 2, 1. Great, thank you for that. So it looks like we have a strong showing for Esri Shapefile. About half as many are working with CAD, and 85% are working with Google, KML, KMZ, and then there's a couple for others. So again, please let us know what other formats that includes. And if you have any ideas or suggestions now or any time during the webinar, please feel free to send those along to us. We want our toolkit to be your go-to source of truth. So today we will be talking about data management in VETRO FiberMap. Our mission, as always, is to help our customers gain the time and productivity they need to expand fiber optic broadband service out to their networks. And one of our main objectives in the design of our platform is to allow data management by the end user. So we enable the user to export and import in standardized GIS and engineering formats. So this is something that Alex will be going over today, but we allow for import of formatted shapefile or KMZ files, and there's certain cross sections of the data, network, non-network, and overlay that are enabled for each of those. And then we allow export to shapefile, KMZ, and DXF. So Alex will be getting into some of the methods and tips and pointers and some of the nitty-gritty of how to format those files and what all of this terminology means. So with that, I'll pass the mic along to Alex.
Good morning, folks. So today we're going to talk about the different types of features inside of VETRO. The first aspect that we'll talk about here will be our network features. These network features are going to allow you to bring in splicing and circuitry. They're going to be your main nodes and cables that you'll be working with. And you can bring them in via both shapefile and KMZ format. The second aspect that we will be looking at here will be our non-network features. And these will include your infrastructure and utility points, mainly your ducts, slack loops, and poles. But they will not be contained in your splicing and circuitry. If you're thinking about a comparison between the network and non-network features, the network features are essentially your main cast whereas your non-network features are the supporting cast for the network features. What that means is that the non-network features might be relevant to your network, but they're not directly tied into the splicing functionality and the circuitry functionality. Again, these can come in via Shapefile and KMZ. The third aspect you'll see here is our overlays. These overlays are generally going to be reference data, whether that's your neighborhood, some fire hydrants, water mains, any sort of electricity lines and things like that. These are going to mainly help you find some additional information or to help you locate where maybe a cable is a good place to go or to put in. Maybe you have electric lines already and you actually want to put some fiber lines alongside that. You can use these overlays to help you find the best location for that. Now, the overlays are limited to Shapefile Import only. They are not involved in splicing or circuitry, but they do allow you to bring polygons in. So that is one additional benefit of using an overlay. Now, I want to give you a quick idea of what this looks like in VETRO. Once we've gone through this a little bit, we'll actually dive into a demo of it. But from your layer list here, you will be able to work with two different things. The main will be your layer category. This category is essentially the folder that you're seeing here on the left. This is going to vary depending on which type of feature you're using. Now, within those categories, you can have any number of layers, and those layers will have various names depending, again, on what you're looking at. The section here that you're seeing on the left with the network features is referencing your fiber cables and network points categories. This is essentially telling you where anything that contains splicing and circuitry is going to go. The non-network features option on the left is showing you where your support and cast is going. And then the two arrows for the overlays are actually pointing to a couple of different folders. The overlays are unique in that you can put them into various categories. That's going to allow you to create a new category, create a new layer, and to bring that in per your preference. Now, when we're importing into VETRO, we have a data management button at the bottom of the layer list. When you first click on that, there will be the export option. If you are in edit mode, you will also have the import option. Now, both the export and the import are going to be covered in this topic, but we'll be focusing on the export for this first product demo. We'll get into the import towards the demos later down in this slide deck. Now, when you're trying to import, you'll actually have the ability to bring in templates. These templates are extremely recommended to you guys. You'll see those two URLs located where my mouse cursor is right here. And this is going to allow you to download a guide for your formatting. So as long as you're fitting into those templates, you'll be able to bring data into VETRO. And we'll see an example of that in a moment. Once you have all your data formatted, you'll come back into here, go to your import tab, and you'll actually choose a file name to import. You'll choose whether or not you would like to see this in a project or plan, or whether you would like to see it globally. But we definitely recommend putting it in the project and plan, as the project is going to help you keep things organized. The Shapefile import will be similar. The whole first section of this will look exactly as the KMZ one does. However, the second page of the Shapefile import is going to give you a bit more flexibility. This flexibility is going to allow you to choose whether a feature is a network feature. And if it is, it will limit you to the fiber cable or network points category, depending on if this is a line or point layer. If you are not importing a network feature, you will be able to choose any number of categories. In this case, there is a lateral option right here, or excuse me, an overlay option right here. And we're actually creating a new layer called a partner lateral. And that's going to be our overlay. Keep in mind that you can import both into an existing layer or a new layer with that overlay. So we could have chosen an option here rather than typing in a new name. I'm going to go ahead and jump over to a new window here. And you should now see VETRO on my screen. And so we'll go over that one more time in the interface. We can access our layer list up here in the top right. And within that, we'll get a number of folders as you're seeing here. These are your categories. Within these categories, you have your layers. And then we also have what are called projects and plans. Many of you are already familiar with this, but as a quick reminder, these projects are the top level directory that you're working inside of. Generally, they're going to be regional or based on your customers in the case of an engineering firm. And then your plans inside of that are going to be the actual phases that you're working in, whether that's design, as-built, or construction. At the bottom of the layer list, you'll have your manage data option. If you want to import, you'll need to make sure that you are in edit mode. And so once we open that up, we'll go ahead and export a plan here. Stephen has set this plan up for me. So what I'm going to do is export this into both KMZ, Shapefile, and DXF to give you an example. We'll get into those in just a moment, but from the import tab, the main focus here is going to be on the KMZ template and the shapefile template. These are going to help you format that data. We recommend using these until you're familiar with it. Once you're more familiar with it, you can kind of wean yourself off those as you get more accustomed. I'm going to go ahead and jump back to our slides real quick. Give me one moment here. All right. So before we get into the actual formatting, we do want to go over the different types of files that we will be working with. The first one we'll talk about will be our KMZ files. Many of you are familiar with these already, but to give you a brief overview, these are keyhole markup language files, except they are zipped. These come from a company called Open Geospatial Consortium, and they are an international standard format. They will be open. They can be opened in Google Earth, QGIS, and various other GIS platforms, but we'll be using Google Earth for this. With a KMZ in VETRO, we can bring in both network and non-network features, but we cannot bring in overlays. We can not create new layers or new categories with the KMZ import. And when we do our import, we will actually see all of our point and line geometry as well as their attributes. For shapefile, this will be slightly different. We are going to be able to bring in any sort of network, non-network, and overlay data. It's going to be a bit more flexible, as I mentioned earlier. It's going to bring in your point, line, and polygon geometry and attributes. And it's also going to allow you to create new layers and new layer categories. Some examples of some shapefile usable applications are QGIS, ArcGIS, MapInfo, and any other number of standard GIS programs. Now, the KMZ formatting is going to be rather strict. When we're formatting, we want to ensure that the top folder is going to be our plan folder. Within that plan folder, we will have 3 subcategories, and these categories will be our network lines, our network points, and others. Inside of each of those folders, we will have a folder for a given feature. So for example, if we're looking to import backbone cables, we would have a structure of plan, network lines, backbone, and then within that folder, we'll have all of our backbones. An example of network points would be plan, network points, splice closure, all of our features. And then for others, this will actually work with non-network features. We'll have plan, others, and then slack loop and features inside of it. We also want to make sure that our attributes within the KMZ are matching those in VETRO. And this is where the template comes in. For example, we do want to ensure that we are formatting our properties in Google Earth correctly. So we need to make sure that if we're importing fiber capacity, we're doing that as fiber capacity : space number. Same thing with notes here. I'm going to go ahead and jump over to Google Earth really quick. And what we're going to do here is look at 3 separate KMZ files. One of these will be our unformatted data. one will be our template, and one will be our formatted data. So we're going to work through each of those. Now, when we print out or bring in our unformatted data, this is typically what we already have pre-VETRO, pre-formatting. You'll see in this case that we have 4 fields: ID, type, strands, and placement. What you won't see is the folder structure. All we're seeing here is that there is one folder and all of our features are inside of it. This, of course, will vary depending on your source data or however you store your data currently. But what we want to get to is actually our template here. And so this template will show us our plan name. It will have our subfolders. And since we're working with lines in this case, we'll focus on the network lines. We'll have our feature type folders under that. So our backbones, our laterals, and our drops. And within each of those, we will see the templates for that feature type. In this case, what we're seeing is that the backbone has a format similar to this, where we need to put in a placement value, which is a string. We need to put a name in, which is a string, etc. Our fiber capacity must be a numeric value. Our helix factor must be a numeric value, etc. So this template will be extremely helpful in figuring that out. Now, what I want to do here is show you the unformatted data versus the formatted data. So when you're looking at the unformatted data, if we choose this first option here, which is ID 0, and we go into our formatted KMZ, and we go find ID 0, which is this one right here, we'll see that we have our plan, our network lines, our backbone, and then each backbone feature inside of this. Our laterals will be similar with each one inside of that, and so on. So that's the actual folder structure. The attributes are going to vary a bit. So rather than seeing it listed out in this table here, what we can do is actually right-click on our feature and choose Properties. And once we have this pop up here, what you'll have is your actual descriptors that you're putting in. So in this case, we're actually changing strands 144 over to fiber capacity 144. The reason we're making this change is because fiber capacity is the name of the field in VETRO, and we want our schemas to actually match between the two. That's going to ensure that it's actually going to accept the field for the network feature. Placement here, similarly, all I did was format this into the proper beginning structure here, and then I place my value afterwards. And you'll just want to do this for each line for your fields. So if we had a notes field, we can go ahead and add notes, and I could just say import me. And that will now populate the notes field as we import into VETRO. For those of you who are working inside of Google Earth, I should also mention that you can add folders simply by clicking on another folder and adding that. So for example, if I go under my network points and I right click, I could choose add folder, and we can say splice closure. And so now any splice closures that we want to add, we can put into that folder and we're all set. So that covers the main focus of the KMZ. What I'm going to do here is jump over to QGIS to show you the shapefile formatting right after a couple slides. Now, the shapefile formatting is going to be a bit different than the KMZ formatting. Whereas your KMZ formatting requires a specific folder structure, the shapefile formatting is actually a bit different. Instead of just importing the direct KMZ file, we're actually importing a zipped folder containing any number of shapefiles that we are looking to bring in. The shapefile does require that you have a zip folder with each shapefile's 4 main files. That's going to be your SHP, your SHX, your DBF, and your PRJ. And these 4 are what compile a single shapefile. So for example, you could have backbone.shape, backbone.shx, backbone.dbf, and backbone.prj. That's going to be one backbone layer. So you're going to need to do that for each of your individual layers. Besides that, we're going to need to ensure that our field names match those that we have in VETRO. If we are importing a not network or a network feature, we will also need to do that if we are importing it into an existing overlay. Now, if we are importing into a brand new overlay, we can use whatever field names that we would like, because it will actually create new fields based on those names. The reason there's a difference there is because you've already established that you want an existing feature type to have specific fields, and you actually just want to populate those. So you're going to need to match those attributes. If you are importing into a dropdown or domain list, for example, fiber capacity, you will need to ensure that you are bringing in a value that is in that list. So for example, if as fiber capacity, maybe you have a 24 count cable. If you're in your VETRO instance and you see the fiber capacity attribute and you click on that and 24 is an option, you can use 24. If you don't see 19, you can't use 19. In that scenario, you would just shoot us an email, let us know that you need us to make 19 available, and then you could bring it in through the importer. A couple things to note on the shapefile is also that we need to be projected into WGS 84, which is EPSG 4326. All that's telling us is the actual real world coordinates that we'll need to use in order to bring this in. It's going to help us keep that all in the same format, so all of your data is using the same exact projection. We also need to ensure that we are using single part geometry rather than multi-part geometry. And what that means is that we do not have multiple features spread across an area that all have a single record. If you're looking to define multi-part geometry, it is basically features that are composed of multiple shapes that are grouped into a single feature under a single record in the attribute table. It's generally problematic as they are separate from one another, but by converting them to a single part, we're ensuring that each of those has their own record. If we are talking about a field that uses numeric values, we will simply need to put numeric values in there, such as fiber capacity or number of ports. All right, so we're going to hop over to QGIS. And in here, once again, we have three different groups of layers that we'll look at. The first one here is going to be unformatted. This is one single shapefile. The second is our template. And the third is our formatted data. The unformatted data, if I open up my attribute table by right-clicking on it and then choosing Open Attribute Table, will actually show us a number of rows or columns in here, such as ID, type, strands, and placement. You'll notice here that my type is going to refer to the various cables that we have in VETRO. So your backbones, your laterals, and your drops. This is incorrect. So this is our unformatted. The reason this is incorrect is because we will want three separate shapefiles. We will want one for drop, one for lateral, and one for backbone. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. The other reason that this data is incorrect is because we have strands as our field name. We actually want this to be fiber capacity. If we go to our properties for this layer, so again, right-click and choose properties, go up to information, we'll see that this is a multi-line string. We'll also see that it is in the wrong EPSG. So once again, we need to ensure that this is in the correct projection, and this is actually the correct line type. So what we're going to do is show you how to do that. The first step here is to open up your processing tab and choose the toolbox. And what this will show you is an entire list of tools that are available to you. You can search for any of these and they'll show up under different headers, but there are a couple specific ones that you'll want to look at here. The first one is the Reproject Layer tool. And what this is going to do is allow you to choose a new projection for this layer. So we're saying our unformatted fiber should now be in this new layer, and we can create a temporary layer out of that or create a new layer through our browser. We'll run that, and so now we have our brand new reprojected layer. Once we have done that, we can actually run what's called a multi-part to single part. And so what this is doing again is actually taking the multiple shapes in one single entry and putting them into a single shape, each into their own single shape with an entry for each of them. So we'll just run this one more time. We'll run it on that new layer, and we'll just create another temporary layer. And so it'll get added to our list. So what we have now is a properly projected single part geometry. The next thing we'll want to do is actually rename our fields. So we can go ahead and use what's called the refactor fields tool. And this is going to allow you to map each of your current existing field names to a new field name, or to existing if you don't change it. So what I'll do here is change my ID to capitalized. I'm going to leave type for the moment, and I'm going to change strands to fiber capacity. I'm also going to change placement and just make it capitalized. You'll see that we're doing this to our single parts layer, and we're once again creating a temporary layer. We'll go ahead and run that. So what we can do here is just right click and open our attribute table one more time. And you'll see now that my field names have changed for the 3 that we have updated. Now, the last thing that we want to do once we have our fields in order, everything's pretty much ready to be imported. The only thing that's left is to split this into our 3 shapefiles. And we want to do that by our type field here. So you'll see that there are 5 backbones, a number of drops, and 6 laterals, or 5 laterals. In order to split this, what we can do is type split vector and use the split vector layer tool, which is going to allow us to create a shapefile for each of those types. So if I go ahead and choose that, we should choose our refactored layer here. We'll choose type, and then we'll choose where to save this. So I'm going to go ahead and save it into this folder here, and we'll just use that one. And so once I've run this, if I then pull up my files here and go into that extra folder, you'll see that this has now created 3 different layers. We'll have our backbone, our drop, and then our lateral. So these are all now separated for us, and these are ready to go into VETRO. All we have to do is simply select these, right-click, send to compressed folder, and then we can throw this right into the importer and map out our values. Going to go ahead and switch back to our slides real quick. I'd like to kind of go over a little bit of a summary of what we just talked about. The main things here that you're seeing on the left will be our attributes in VETRO. So these are going to be our field names and their values on the right. If you're working in Google Earth, you'll have your field names in the properties panel at the bottom. And if you're working in QGIS or say ArcMap or another GIS, you'll actually have your attribute tables that will be represented with your columns as your fields that match up here on the left. And then your actual values will match the attributes here on the right. A couple helpful hints and reminders for what we've gone over. For KMZ, you will want to make sure that you're following the proper folder structure. You're going to want to make sure that your attributes are all placed into your properties with that specific syntax. So fiber capacity : value. When you are saving your KMZ, you are going to want to right-click on the plan folder and save as whatever KMZ name you want to use. As far as your shapefiles go, there are a couple of things to note. We do have a file size and a point or vertex limit, depending on whether you're doing points, lines, or polygons. Your field names may have character limits coming out of a system like QGIS. The reason you might have some file limits or field name limits is that QGIS limits to 8 characters. So you might not be able to get full fiber capacity, but you can get fiber CA. The closer you are, the more accurate it's going to import. As long as you have that string in there, it should find it and import no problem. You do want to make sure that you are in the right projection. Keep in mind that you don't have to worry about this for the KMZ, just for the shapefile. And you will also want to ensure that you are working with single part geometry. Once again, to run through this process, you can use the reproject layer in the processing toolbox, the multi-part single part in the processing toolbox, the field refactor, and the split vector layers in the processing toolbox. And I'll pass it back to Stephen.
Hey, thanks a lot, Alex. That was some very helpful information. So just to go over a couple of additional items here, just a reminder to everyone that we have a help documentation section available in the platform. And if you open that user dashboard, the question mark icon next to the user dashboard in the top right corner of the screen and select the documentation menu, from there you have the option to get into our user manual, which goes very in depth on a variety of topics, including data management. There is an introductory tutorial guide section that will take you stepwise through getting started with some of the major features and tools. And then there's also a section that contains links to the other webinars. And just an additional reminder there to use the templates that Alex highlighted in the import menu. Those are a very helpful tool for understanding the formatting. Another announcement, we have an upcoming white paper that will be available on our website very soon. It will be a detailed paper that will get into some more of the topics that Alex was talking about today and get into detail on additional formatting tips and tricks, especially for QGIS, some of the services that Alex went over, and more. So that'll be something that's coming out soon, later on this week or next week. Be on the lookout for that. It will be available on the website. And if you want to reach out directly, you can contact us at support@vetrofibermap.com. So jumping into our next slide, that brings us to the end of all of the regularly scheduled content for today. Be on the lookout for invites to future user enablement sessions. The next scheduled session is the 13th of March. If there are any topics that you would like to see covered, please, again, feel free to reach out, be in contact with us. So that brings us to our next slide. Just a quick reminder about our technical support team. We're here Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can contact us via email or phone if you have questions about anything. If you have general information, including sales inquiries, especially including sales inquiries, contact our sales team. Both our support and sales team are readily available and very willing to help. And also a reminder, as far as data management goes, if you have any questions about any of this, please reach out and let us know. And we have a GIS services team, and we have the world's best GIS services team on call, and they're there when you need us, when you need us. So we're here to do large data sets. We can do remote data services. We can talk about base map customization, services around batch splicing, auto design, CAD conversion to shapefile, or any third-party GIS or engineering formatting, or any other data needs. Please get in touch and start the conversation with us. We're happy to talk about that with you. So we will jump right into additional Q&A that has come up. So please feel free to submit any other questions if you have them. We had a question here. Can you bring in map services like the Esri map service? Alex, do you want to speak to that question?
Sure. Yes, we can bring in Esri map services. Generally, all we need to bring those in are a URL where you would actually hit that service and some sort of authorization method. Generally, this is a unique token, but there are other ways we can get that as well.
Okay, excellent. And there's another question that we didn't quite make it into the slides yet.
Sure.
Someone submitted, and someone was asking why the 10 megabyte file size limit. And I can speak to this one. Jesse has responded to that, and I'll just share his response. So for VETRO FiberMap, files larger than 10 meg might introduce performance issues in limited cases. So for files larger than 10 meg, we ask that you contact us at support@VETRO FiberMap, and we're happy to discuss your use case with you and find the correct method to bring your data into VETRO, so you can see the data you need without experiencing any decreased performance. Yeah, so thanks for those questions. Those are great. So from everyone here at VETRO FiberMap, thank you for joining. We look forward to hearing from you and continuing to work together to make VETRO FiberMap the best fiber design and management tool available. Thanks again.